What happens before a Navy SEAL ever sees combat? Years of training, systematic, deliberate, in order to do something called stress inoculation, which is exposing their brains to pressure until their default response changes. And what used to trigger panic triggers focus instead. And nobody questions this. Nobody tells a SEAL candidate that they need more discipline to get focus or to try harder or that something is wrong with them. No, they just train. They architect and systematize their life so they can actually carry their mission. Now think about you. Think about any founder you may know. You are subject to incredible pressure, but you are told to discipline yourself. You're told to work harder. You're told that your environment doesn't matter, and you never ever train your ability to think and execute. And you are in one of the most cognitively demanding occupations on earth, and you're completely unprepared. And that's why you are inconsistent. That is why you can't focus. That's why you have doubts about whether you'll be able to succeed. But that doesn't say anything about you and everything about how your brain is trained. Because there's this story you've been telling yourself that you have a discipline, a focus, a consistency problem, something is wrong, that there's something that needs to be fixed. And that story is costing you way more than lost revenue. Because when you think you're broken, then you try to fix yourself. You try to discipline yourself. You try more willpower, but they're all solving the wrong problem. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing to fix. Your brain is just underprepared for what you're asking it to do. You are in the most demanding environment in human history, and you have yet to realize the brain is the bottleneck. And that gap between what you know you need to do and what you end up doing is precisely what is keeping you stuck in your life and your business. And no amount of willpower and hard work can fix it, because that's not a self-development gap, that's not a discipline gap, it's not a focus gap, that's a capacity gap. And capacity gaps don't close through self-improvement or self-development, they close through training. Because you gotta understand what you're up against. You probably only see half of it. The first villain, it's very obvious. It's technology, it's infinite scroll, it's notification loop that keep you hooked. You're constantly spending time on platforms that are carefully engineered by the best behavioral scientists to hijack your dopamine system, so that over time your attention degrades. And every time that you spend scrolling, your capacity for focus quietly drops. And that is not a personal weakness, that's just biology. That's just how brain work. But there's a second villain that is worse and nobody talk about, which is infinite possibility. Something Navy SEALs never have to deal. Because Navy SEAls don't choose their mission, they're handed to them. Their objective is defined. Everything from that point forward is execution. Everything is clear. You don't get that, my friend. Every single morning you wake up as a founder in a completely different world where you have infinite opportunities, infinite shiny objects, and 1,000 things that seem urgent, and 1,000 that could actually matter. And before you can do an hour of real work, you've already burned a lot of cognitive resources on things that doesn't mean anything. So you're facing the attention economy that steals your focus, but also infinite possibility that steals your clarity. And both compound in the wrong way every single day. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you finished your day feeling like you have had an elite day where you finished everything you needed to do? Not busy, not productive, actually at your absolute best, tackling the most important work. Well, that gap between your best day and your average day is what's keeping you stuck in business. It's the difference between untrained and trained capacity. And it has a number. And in Selfmastered, we measure it across 7 neurological dimensions. Things like focus, attention span, stress response, consistency, system friction, decision quality, and recovery rate. And that gives us an execution score that we then train. Because elite performers are not born, they're trained. SEALs perform under pressure because they systematically been trained for that. Surgeons, fighter pilots, police officers, every high-stakes performer on earth builds the capacity before they need it. Before, not during. They don't show up hoping discipline carries them through. They train the response patterns until those patterns become automatic. And your brain works exactly the same way. It has the same capacity for adaptation, the same ability to get better at handling the stress that's coming at you. And I remember a guy I worked with 3 months ago who was running his own agency, and on paper things were doing fine. He was doing 10K a month. He was working about 6 to 7 hours a day. But every time he had to actually do any sort of outreach, he just felt, in his own word, the weight of everything, and he didn't want to do it. So he delegated all the fulfillment, and he ended up just wasting 7 to 8 hours on things that didn't matter. You know, things like positioning, like better strategies, whatever, but always talk a 10K a month. And he had months of important projects, sitting untouched. He just couldn't help himself do it. And every time he tried to, though, he will have this crazy reaction that would stop him on his track. And at some point, he told me that there was nothing that could be done. He was just who he was. And he was grateful that he had a 10K a month business. And I was like, what are you talking about, dude? This is a capacity problem. Just train your capacity. And that's exactly what we did. So it was a skills, behaviors, or beliefs problem. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't undisciplined. He wasn't broken. He was just under-trained. So what we did is within 24 hours, we literally mapped out where his day was bleeding time and energy. In the first week, he saved like 15 hours. Then what we did is we started mapping out what needed to be trained to get to the next level. So the skills to execute in specific case was sales-oriented skills. The beliefs that he had about sales that didn't allow him to move forward. The daily behaviors, the systems to execute on that would guarantee he eventually becomes successful. And within 3 weeks, everything has shifted. Money hasn't caught up yet, but he was already feeling different. Within 3 months, he was doubling his revenue. Within 6 months, he tripled it. So this didn't happen because he suddenly got more talented or higher IQ or anything like that. No, because he trained his capacity, so much so that years of chronic pain he had been carrying his lower back were gone. He ran 2 half marathons, and for the first time in his life, he said, I'm having the best sleep of my life. And that happened because he was able to finally tackle the bottleneck, which is his brain capacity to handle everything that he needed to do. And he started to show up joyful to work. That's what trained capacity looks like from the inside out. And that is what will eventually make you successful as soon as you decide to prioritize it. Because your breakthrough doesn't sit at the other side of another marketing program you won't execute on, but at the other side of a training program that transforms your brain into the most important weapon in your arsenal. And let me give you 2 real numbers. Imagine first founder running a web studio, wasting about 40% of his capacity, not slacking, actually working, doing research on YouTube, comparing other people's portfolios, and doing a bunch of things that really didn't move at revenue at all. He had the right skills to scale, but he just didn't deploy them because his beliefs kept him playing smaller. He thought he needed more stuff before he could do more outreach. And behaviors were just not matching up with that ambition. So 40% gone. We literally oriented those 40% to outreach and build the behaviors and the beliefs to actually sustain it. And he grew his business 4 times in 6 months. And this is universal. It pretty much happens with every client. We find out that they're wasting between 30 and 50% of their time on things that don't need to be done at all. Not out of weakness, but because the brain naturally prioritizes what doesn't matter. And the problem is that neuroplasticity cuts both ways. Every pattern you repeat just gets stronger. So if you procrastinate a lot, you get better at procrastinating. If you doubt yourself a lot, you get better at doubting yourself. And the skills you don't build eventually atrophy. The beliefs you don't challenge, they calcify. And the behaviors you don't train, guess what? They become the one you run you. So you are being trained right now, every single day. The question is whether you are actively choosing what runs you. You're deliberately architecting your future by building the right capacity to get what you want in life. And that's the whole shtick. Every founder you admire, every Juan, Travis Kalanick, or Elon Musk, or Jeff Bezos, or Steve Jobs, doesn't matter. They all have trained their capacity for greatness. But everybody suddenly questions whether they need to work on their capacity to execute as a founder, which to me is very stupid because we've normalized the absurdity of assuming that people can just show up and do their best work. No, that never happens. You need a program that actually expands your capacity and with a dashboard that helps you track it in real time. Our stuff has that. Most of our clients hit a personal revenue record within 30 days, and pretty much 100% of them, if they are at 6 figures, double within 4 months. And not through magic, through actually executing at their absolute peak and having the data to validate they're actually doing so. That is the key. So when you have capacity plus direction, training plus mission, get what happened. You unlock the elite operator within. And that is most likely what you've been missing. So if you truly want to succeed, you need to build that capacity. If you want to build it in a few short weeks with a proven program that has worked with 400 people before you, book a call below. And in the meantime, see you in the next video.